America, the land of free speech, the beacon of freedom and democracy, the land of the Statue of Liberty, the champions of freedom all across the world, they have been conducting a campaign of silencing and terrorizing the movement that is calling for a ceasefire. That's criticizing the genocide and calling for a ceasefire. Now, universities, Donald Trump himself, the country itself, deporting people, imprisoning, kidnapping them from the streets, security forces in civilian clothes, they go and kidnap people for speaking up against the genocide. I thought the United States was supposed to be the beacon of freedom and liberty. Isn't the United States the beacon of freedom and liberty, with the Statue of Liberty like that, raising that? And everyone can say whatever they want. I thought they were like that. What happened? Anyway, the unis are not giving in. Over 150 college presidents signed letter rebuking Trump administration overreach. Especially, some of the largest universities too, but it's stretching to, diverse universities in very many locations inside of the United States. Trump threatening them with sanctions, basically stopping the funding, taking away their money, bullying, mafia approach. And thankfully, not all of them are giving in. There are movements now coming from the universities against Donald Trump, similar to the mass protests that we saw in the United States in the past couple of weeks against the Trump administration. Now there is growing action against them. However, how powerful would these people be, and would they be able to stop the Trump administration from continuing this campaign for freedom, this campaign for liberty, this campaign for freedom of speech, to protect freedom of speech? Well, to understand that, we need to know what's happening. Now, there was this report here on the Palestine Chronicle, from Miss Rachel to anti-war college students, the end of the American free speech, they called it. And in it, they were talking about the actual campaign or project called Project Esther. What's Project Esther? A 33-page document published in October last year by the Heritage Foundation. And the US government teamed up with extremist elements from the Zionist lobby to crush criticism of Israel. From its recommendations to form a federal task force to combat alleged anti-Semitism, which is really just criticism of the Israeli government, to its strategy to tear down leading academic institutions. The plan is being followed. The Heritage Foundation, most well known for its Project 2025, is known to possess considerable influence on the Trump White House. Of course they do. Yet they continue, despite obvious influence and policy recommendations that are being followed almost down to the letter. There has been little connection drawn between these think tank documents and Donald Trump's anti-free speech crusade. So, there's a project behind it with task force and draconian measures being taken by the United States government. But it's not going very well with the people complying. Why? Because they are keen to protect their freedoms, especially the universities and activists as well. Now, it's not just stopping with the universities. There were also actions being taken by organizations in the United States. For example, this Organization of American Historians that voted to condemn Israeli scholasticide in Gaza, the mass homicide, mass slaughter of scholars and students According to the report, there 10,000 students were killed, thousands of teachers, scientists inside of the Gaza Strip, of course, let alone the doctors and the nurses and the healthcare staff and the journalists and everyone. They're outright saying it's a scholasticide, not just a genocide. And Israel is doing that deliberately, meaning, well, despite Donald Trump's draconian measures and approach to stop this criticism from happening, clearly there are people who are not only fighting, but taking the battle to the next level, calling for more action and not stopping, not backing down, despite all of the pressure that's coming from Donald Trump. And if this continues, it's going to be very difficult for the US establishment to continue and have so much resources against people who are simply practicing their basic right of free speech, because it requires a lot of resources. If you're going to talk about hundreds of thousands or millions of people protesting, taking action, well, how much resources do you need to stop these people? So it's going to be very difficult for the administration to stop that, despite the fact that they are tied with the extreme elements within the Zionist lobby in the United States, with what was labeled as the Project Esther, to shut down any criticism coming from Israel, because the movement has become simply too big for them.